Back on the Jefferson Exchange on Jefferson Public Radio's News and Information Service. I'm Geoffrey Riley. Thank you for listening. Our guest today is composer Webster Young. He has written a self-biography, a memoir, as it were, Berkeley, Paris Express, about the many, many places he's traveled and the many, many things he's learned and many, many pieces of music he's composed, including several operas. And you can join us on the Exchange if you'd like to visit with Webster at 800-838-3760. 541-552-6782 or by email jx@jeffnet.org. So, 17 years old, you're pretty much a guitar virtuoso and quite renowned, apparently. Had gotten the attention of some people who were in a position to do you some good career-wise.
Yes, I was in among the elite, and then I shocked everyone when I quit the guitar and took up the violin after meeting my uncle Kenneth France. This was in Berkeley, California. I was at UC Berkeley, and I was in the music department wanting to study classical music, and meeting my uncle, who was an expressionist painter in the Bay Area, who eventually moved up to Ashland, changed my life.
Well, let's describe the decision-making process then, because it's not like you have this potential for what could be a great career, or at least a great career in bars anyway, at age 17 playing the electric guitar. So what was the thought process that led you to UC Berkeley and away from the guitar?
Well, UC Berkeley was sort of a de facto decision. It was the best school I got into, and I naturally wanted to be a music major. But I was still playing guitar actively in groups, and we had a manager in the Bay Area, and we were trying to make it big. But actually, I hadn't been exposed to much classical music, and there were two pieces of music that changed my musical life, both coming from exposure at the university. One was the Brahms double concerto. I heard that on vacation in New York, and really, it immediately struck me that was everything I wanted to do but couldn't do with the music I was involved in. And the other was the Haydn Violin Concerto in G major, the slow movement. And that was on a record that I had on loan from the UC Music Department. And the slow movement of that concerto really changed my life. I realized that there was perfect melodic musical structure there that was beyond anything that I had ever thought possible in music, and immediately that was really the two things that converted me.
Before we go too much further, I want to let the listeners hear some music that you have composed, give them just a little taste of what sorts of things you do. Can you set up what we're going to hear there with this first track?
Yes, this piece is called Pavan. A Pavan is an old English dance. It was done in the Elizabethan courts, so it's a very Shakespearean kind of music.
And here it is. We'll just listen for a second. So that's a pavan. You said an old English dance. And how old were you when you wrote that?
Well, actually, that was here in Ashland, and it was for one of my ballets that was done with Eric Hurst in Lithia Park. That was part of our ballet, The Judgment of Paris, and it was a dance interlude in the middle of the ballet, but it has become my most popular piano piece as a published piece of music.
All right, so here you are at UC Berkeley, the couple pieces of music that changed your life. You decide not the electric guitar, but rather the violin. Why the violin? Simply because you had some knowledge of the neck fingering?
Well, actually, the violin with its bowed sound is actually fairly close to the electric guitar's sustained overdriven sound. I was using a very sustained overdriven sound on my guitar. And the instrument that seemed to me to produce the same thing was the violin. And I picked one of the more difficult things to go over to, but I did manage to learn it in a pretty quickly.
What sorts of reactions did you get from music professors, though, who said, so what do you know about the violin? It's like, well, I played electric guitar for a bunch of years. I mean, did you get some really shocked looks?
Actually, no, they were very kind professors, and I made very quick progress. And I think the thing that really surprised my professors was how quickly I was able to play with a decent vibrato. It only took me about 6 to 7 months, and I was able to play with a vibrato, which is one of the harder things to develop. I totally forgot the question here. Okay, so you were playing 6 to 7 months, but how many hours a day then were you practicing? Oh, probably 1 or 2 hours a day, maybe more. All right, so you really are a natural in music. Can we safely just put that one to rest, that you could pretty much pick up an instrument and get to know your way around it in pretty short order? I would say so, except there's one instrument that I can't, woodwinds. I for some reason, I can't get a note out of a flute. Okay, I was about to ask you how you were with saxophones and that sort of thing. I want to backtrack just a little bit, because it's not just about music, and you did mention your uncle, Kenneth Miller Franz, and his artwork. So the book is interspersed with actually bits of art, not just from your uncle, but from other people as well. One of the first ones you show us is Marc Chagall's "Time is a River Without Banks." What is the significance of that painting to you? Well, to me, if you look at that painting, and you probably could find it online, it's a picture of it's a rather eccentric picture of a flying clock over a landscape. And there's a violin involved in the picture. But if you really look at that picture for a while, you get the feeling that it almost stops time. There's something about it that calls into question time. And I brought that painting into the book because music is so involved with time. In fact, you cannot perceive music without letting it pass by in a time frame. It's not like a painting where you can just approach the painting, take your eye away, come back. Music is wedded to time, unlike any other artistic medium. So I brought in that painting to bring in, it has several nuances in the book, but that's the main reason. All right, so that's interesting, though, to think about it in those terms, though, that music and time so closely interrelated. And yes, you can wander away from a piece of music, but unlike the piece of art hanging on the wall, it will have changed. Yeah. Are you a painter yourself? I've tried. My family were all painters. My father, my grandfather, and as a boy, I had to paint. We were all considered potential Van Goghs in our family, but it didn't stick with me. I think the medium is people inclined to certain media, and I wasn't inclined to painting, even though I love it. You spend much of the first chapter of Berkeley, Paris Express, Webster Young on your time in Woodland, California. Why were you there? I followed my aunt and uncle up to Davis, and then I followed them here to Ashland. I basically was so close to their family, I followed them wherever they went. So I went up to Davis, ended up at UC Davis, and I lived in a cottage in Woodland, California. And that was the first time that I really began writing music in earnest. And what sorts of things were coming out of you? And I mean, did you pick a genre and then aim for that, or did you just begin to sit down with an instrument and begin to make it? Well, this is described in the book. Really, musical themes just started coming to me, and I would write them down, and that's when I was just realizing at that time that I could become a composer, and music was just coming to me, and then I would amplify on that music, and some of that music really remains I think some of the best things I've done. Some of those melodies that came to me in that cottage in Woodland were in Ballet in the Park. Mm-hmm. The opening theme of our ballet waltzes was one of those that I wrote in 1973.
Webster Young is our guest on the Jefferson Exchange. He's written a memoir of his life in art and music, Berkeley, Paris Express. You can join us on the Exchange at 800-838-3760. And finally decided to go back to school at UC Davis. Was it just to make sure that you could actually have the sheepskin to finish the actual documentation of a career in music?
Yes, and it was a very good idea. My family pressed me to go back into school and finish the degree, which I did, and it was a good fortune. There were 4 composers on the faculty of UC Davis, 4 published serious composers. They recognized that I was a composer and encouraged me, and I was very fortunate in that respect. And so I'll always be grateful to UC Davis.
You do say, though, in the book that that my music studies soon became a battle in my musical soul. Why? Yeah. How so?
Well, that was where I confronted really the atmosphere of the whole serious music world in composition, which was inclined towards atonality and abstractionism in music. So music at that time, it wasn't even as comprehensible as Philip Glass. I mean, it was really out there, didn't make much sense, didn't have much meaning. And I was someone looking for meaning in art. I wanted music to have meaning and beauty, and those were not to be found in the music that I was confronting.
It was all atonal stuff then.
Yeah, right. And really some of it pretty wild stuff.
And so as time has gone on, though, how has time treated the pieces of music of the composers that you were working with at UC Davis?
Well, I remember very well in 1985 when the New York Times, Donald Hanahan, published a music article called "And So We Bid Farewell to Atonality." And I knew at that point that the music world had finally recognized the problems involved in modernism in music and were starting to look for something else. So a lot of my professor's music is, I'm sure, is not played very much anymore. And the music world has moved on.
Moved on to things beyond the atonality. Let's, as long as we're talking about music, let's hear some more. And before we get to this Spanish dance, would you set us up again and explain what it's about?
Yeah, Spanish dance was also first heard in Lithia Park, part of a ballet called Tango.
Okay, let's hear a little bit of Spanish dance.